Welcome everybody to the Metallic Minerals webinar. We are going to focus today primarily on the recent exploration results from Keno Hill. So Metallic Minerals is a silver-focused exploration development stage company. Our two key assets, the flagship being Keno Hill, which is one of the world's highest grade producing silver districts next door to Alexco. And then our second asset of focus being the La Plata high-grade silver gold mining district in the southwestern US. So we are going to be making forward-looking statements. There's a bit of a disclaimer here on the technical information in terms of our qualified person and the standards that we follow in Canada called 43101. So just a quick high level for those that are new to the group. Metallic Minerals was the founder and first company in forming what we call the Metallic Group. We started to put this group together back in 2016. I started out my career as an exploration geologist. I was with Placer Dome, which merged with Barrick Gold, went on to co-found NovaGold Resources, and many of the people in the Metallic Group, particularly on the technical side, were former NovaGold alumni that worked alongside of me at NovaGold. We also have some people from Ivanhoe. We've got people from a number of other companies. So this is a team that has strong technical expertise and is credited with a number of major discoveries around the world, but in particular, a number of major ones relevant to the area that we're working in here. We, as we started to put this together in 2016, we sensed that there was a turning point coming. We'd already been through a 6+ year bear market at that point, and our expectation was that this was a good opportunity to start acquiring assets. So the strategy that we took was bringing this team together. We focused in on brownfields districts. So a district like Keno Hill, where you have already a proven environment that makes economic deposits. And in these cases, for the three companies, effectively, we approached this by going in and assembling district scale land packages next to these companies that were smaller companies. They weren't controlled by majors. So there's still opportunities to put together strategic land packages next to these high-grade operating mines. Because we made these acquisitions at the bottom of the metal price cycle, really that was securing longer-term value and doing deals that were very reasonable in terms of their economic terms. Our approach is to apply a systematic exploration approach and strategy. We look to bring in new models. In some cases, the parts of the districts that we're exploring haven't seen exploration in decades, or in some cases, half a century. And so bringing in modern exploration concepts and models and technology, including machine learning and artificial intelligence through our partnership with Goldspot, we think we can really deliver new value. And in each of these areas that we've acquired, we believe we see the potential for a tier 1 asset that a major would be interested in. Our strategy to grow value is very similar to the NovaGold model, and that was acquire the package of ground, grow the resource, de-risk it through engineering. And we think that's one of the best and most explosive ways you can grow value very quickly in the mining cycle of a project. And because you've got the existing infrastructure in these brownfields districts, it really is an opportunity to be able to fast track these things, so shortening timelines and reducing capital costs. So looking at that process that many members of the group were involved in at NovaGold, we'll go into a lot of detail here, but just to lay out the model, we see a couple of key elements to that value creation. Acquiring assets at the bottom of the metal price cycle. So in the NovaGold example, in 2001 for gold, in 2003 for copper, in 2004 for zinc. Growing those resources, de-risking those resources through the 3 engineering stages towards production. Today, when you look at those 3 assets in NovaGold that were acquired at the bottom of the metal price cycle, they're all partnered now with majors, and there's been tremendous value creation along that pathway. So how do we apply this in the Metallic group of companies with the current mix of assets? So our approach has been 4 separate acquisitions over the last several years, starting in 2016 in the Keno Hill Silver District, with the emphasis here being that we saw the opportunity at Keno Hill that this was a district that was vastly underexplored, that have the potential geologically. It's very similar to the Coeur d'Alene district, which has produced over 2 billion ounces of silver, and they're mining it up to 3 kilometers depth. But we saw the opportunity here for developing new resources quite rapidly and utilizing the existing infrastructure. And with the recent discovery at Birmingham on the western side of the district, we saw this as a very relevant, based on recent past work and excellent work in the group. So really that's been the focus at Keno Hill, is one, making these acquisitions over a period of years, two, understanding the opportunities in the various elements of the district, and three, applying new technologies and exploration models to that exploration. I'll just touch very briefly on the two sister companies in the metallic group. Group 10 Metals at Stillwater, we took a similar approach to the lower Stillwater complex. The new model that we applied here was recognizing the potential analogy between the Bushveld in South Africa and Stillwater, and seeing the potential for bulk tonnage type systems in the lower Stillwater complex that would be comparable to Ivanhoe and Anglo's flat reef style deposits in the Bushveld. In Granite Creek Copper at the Carmax Minto district, the opportunity here was to acquire the southern part of the district. We've recently merged the company with the company Copper North to the south. So we now have a resource and are effectively advancing and growing that resource, with the operating mine to the north being the Minto mine. And then the last asset to come into the mix was in late 2019 with the La Plata district. And this one is interesting in that it's kind of a hybrid in terms of the deposit type and model that we're using. The district was well known for its high grade silver and gold vein production, but in the center of the district sits a bulk tonnage Galore Creek style porphyry system, so precious metal rich porphyry. So it's a great fit for the metallic minerals team, because this is the team that advanced Galore, but it's also an opportunity to both have a focus on high grade silver and gold as well as bulk tonnage copper, silver, gold. Okay, so how did we apply this strategy from the metallic group across the group of companies? Recognizing the history here in the district, recognizing the recent discovery at Birmingham as being the kind of level of discovery that the industry is looking for. Most of the silver producers, when you ask them, what would you guys look for in an acquisition, they'll say, we're looking for something that's got at least 50 million to 100 million ounces of potential as a starting point. This is what really kicked off our efforts in the Keno district. So consolidating the 166 square kilometer land position, we effectively had kind of three components to it. About a third of that acquisition was privately held, about a third was held by other public companies, and then a third of it was dropped because it was a bear market and we were able to just stake that. The opportunity being there were 8 past producing high-grade deposits in those areas where they were mining right at surface in the 20s and 30s. And so these quickly led to the development of what we call our advanced stage targets. And this includes the Formo system that we're talking about today. Each of these systems have already drilling, trenching, underground sampling that effectively either has a historic resource that we're building upon, or that demonstrates a mineral inventory that we can advance through further exploration. In addition, looking at the underexplored parts of the Keno Hill district, particularly the eastern half of the district, where we have the same geologic setting as on the west, the opportunity here was for us to come in, do the first exploration work ourselves, and to develop the layers geologically in terms of the soils, the geophysics, and then apply the same kind of model. And the result of that has been the discovery of 12 multi-kilometer scale soil geophysical targets, of which we've had the ability to test the first of those at the Fox target area. And that was part of our announcement a month ago on the East target. We'll touch on just briefly if there's time later today. We're applying the same approach at La Plata. It's just getting started, but we've had the opportunity now to do that same kind of baseline work for the first time in this district, and are looking to release initial results from that activity here in coming weeks. And as I mentioned earlier, really the benefit of being in a brownfields district like Keno Hill is the fact that you've really already got the roads, the power, the infrastructure necessary to build a mine. And the value creation strategy is really all about rapidly taking these to resources, growing these, and de-risking these over the next couple of years. Okay, so 3 key assets in the portfolio. I'm going to focus primarily at Keno Silver and primarily on the western part of the district. But I think this photo is useful to just kind of set the stage in terms of the terrain. This is the Silver Trail Highway coming into the western part of the district. On the right-hand side of the photo, you can see the power station there. That's our Silver Queen property. That was one of the areas that we drilled here last fall. In addition, looking down the highway here, you can see the Elsa mill complex. Across the highway is the Silver King deposit, which is one of the highest grade producers. Maybe a little hard to see, but there's a head frame here, there's a head frame here, there's a head frame here, and then the mill is on the other side of the district. So, you know, easy to work in area in terms of the climate and the terrain. And certainly you mine here year round. If you're drilling on an advanced stage target, you can drill year round. And, you know, it's a great area to be working in with really straightforward logistics. Okay, just drilling down to the regional holdings. So that photo we were just looking at is basically taken over the Silver Trail Highway here on Silver Queen. Looking down the highway, the mill sits in the center of the district. These are Alexica's holdings in the green. Our holdings are in the golden brown colors here on the eastern side of the district and to the south. As you get out of this core high-grade silver part of the district, you start to get more gold rich. So you have strategic metals to the south, Banyan Gold to the west, and of course, Victoria Gold with their big open pit heap leach that's just gone into production. So this is kind of classic for any of the major producing districts of the world. You tend to see lots of deposit styles and lots of activity. Okay, just a quick snapshot on the mill, just to set the context of what we're looking at. This was taken from last fall with the restart at Birmingham. The feasibility that was put out in late 2019, just highlight a couple of points to this operation as they've come back into production starting last fall and are ramping things up here in 2021. Average reserve grade here is 800 grams per ton. This makes it the highest, one of the highest in the world, one of the highest in the industry. So very significant in terms of the silver grade. About 75% of that value is silver. 4 to 5 million ounces a year makes this a top 15 level producer at 400 tons a day. And this operation has potential to, with modest capital requirements, expand to 600 or 800 tons a day, which could push you to a top 10 level silver producer. At an all-in sustaining cost of under $11 an ounce, this district is certainly in the lower half of operators and would be very robust in terms of today's environment at $25 plus silver. And an important element here on capital, they built 2 declines and did some work on the mill for a total of $23 million. So our exploration target in terms of a starting point for metallic minerals is we're looking for another Birmingham plus, so a 50 million ounce plus as a starting point. The kind of capital we might be looking at is in this $10 to $20 million, which is very reasonable for a company of the market cap of metallic minerals. Okay, so we're going to start into a little more of the technical elements. What I'm going to try to do is just walk through, what is a Keno style vein, the structural setting, the geologic setting, and then we'll dive into the details from the recent news release. So first of all, we're underground here at the Bell Keno mine. This is currently the deposit that's being mined by Alexco. I've highlighted here on the figure the contact between the Keno Hill quartzite and the vein itself. So classically, we have 2 main hosts in the district, the quartzite or the greenstones. These are effectively brittle rocks that when these structural corridors pass through them, they allow the formation of these vein deposits. So a critical element to understanding and having success in Keno Hill is knowing where you are along those structural trends and where those structural corridors intercept the best host rocks. So really highlighting the fact that the discrete style classic high-grade vein, very distinctive. You know it when you hit it. They all look fairly much the same. You can see here in the image the silver material, which is the galena. The dark material here is the zinc, and the silver occurs throughout this, but particularly in the silver. So this is these deposits produce a high-grade silver lead concentrate and a zinc concentrate. And about more than 50% of the content in that ore face is sulfide. So this is what we would call a massive sulfide deposit. Typically, width-wise, 1 to 5 meters would be classic width in the district, up to 10 meters, and in some exceptional cases, up to 15 meters. We're effectively looking at selective underground mining has been the dominant history, with some open pit at the shallow parts of the deposit. Keno is known for its very high grades. Typically resources are over 500 grams per ton, and many of the historic mines were over 1,000 grams per ton. Individual deposits, and there's been 36 individual significant deposits in the district already. The largest of those were 50 to 100 million ounces of silver. So these are very significant systems, and I think we're going to see larger ones still with the greater understanding of the systems today. And with our recent work on the eastern part of the district, not only are we seeing these classic high-grade, discrete structures, which we would call a Keno style vein, we're also seeing more disseminated bulk tonnage styles of mineralization that continue away from these discrete veins. And so that holds out the potential that we may have the ability to develop bulk tonnage and perhaps open pit deposits in the Keno district. Okay, so the next few slides, we're going to walk through on these what the geologic setting is for the system. Just to set the framework, the district is 35 kilometers long from the westernmost producer at Silver King to the easternmost producer out here at Cobalt. The Keno Hill mine, the namesake deposit, sits here in the center of the district. We tend to divide the district into 3 components, the western, central, and the eastern parts of the district. And this is partly due to just which areas have seen the most exploration and development activity. So you've got about 200 million ounces of past production and current resources on the west. That was consolidated in the 1950s and 60s. And is really the area of Alexco's focus in terms of the area around Birmingham and Flame and Moth. In the central part of the district, fewer mines actually developed. The deepest mine just down to 200 meters depth. The deepest mine over on the western part of the district, just 300 meters from surface. So significant opportunity to go deeper. As I mentioned earlier, in a similar style geologic system at Coeur d'Alene, they're mining at up to 3 kilometers depth. So looking at the ownership first, this highlight Alexco's holdings in the green here, and you can see that it dominantly covers the western half of the district, and then our own holdings on the east and to the south. So you can see that the focus for our holdings really were those greenfield areas, those areas that were less explored and less developed. And there was a combination of reasons for that. Early on in the history of the district, and up until recently, this was much more fragmented land ownership, and there wasn't road access until fairly recently. It was recognized that this half of the district on the east and to the south had the same geologic setting. There was some work done in the 50s and 60s. There really hasn't been follow-up until metallic minerals. So we have kind of 3 geographic areas that host our advanced stage targets. These include the Silver Queen on the farthest west, the Formo, and then the Summit area, which has multiple targets. Homestake is also advancing towards resource stages. We've got 12 separate multi-kilometer scale targets that have been defined by geophysics and soil geochemistry. And these are earlier stage in the sense that they don't have much for drilling in them yet. But with the recent results at Keno East, where we drilled the first holes over here in the Fox target, we hold high promise for these areas. So let me just kind of strip down. We're just going to, next few slides, are going to try to walk through how, as exploration geologists, we approach the district and really how we build on the understanding and the models to get to where exploration is going to have success in the future. So stripping away all the details just down to the bare geology. What you can see here in terms of the geologic setting, the colors here on the map represent the surface exposure of the main geologic units. These are relatively tabular units. They are sedimentary rocks that have been metamorphosed. So we would call these meta-sedimentary rocks. And that's the same host as you find in the Coeur d'Alene district. These are dipping to the south and west, so down and to the left. And so think of these as kind of a stacked package of relatively consistent thickness geologic units that go across the map. In terms of potential hosts, the light purple unit, the Keno Hill quartzite, and the greenstone have historically been the main deposits of interest because these are the rocks that deform in a brittle fashion and allow the formation of major zones of mineralization. So on the basic geologic map, the black dots represent the historic prospects. The red lines are this actual surface mapping of veins that come right to surface if there's sufficient rock exposure. And that is variable on the district depending on where you are. Some areas have very, very little surface exposure. But if we look at this setting here geologically, off to the west is a major continental scale structural feature. Today, it's actually been, it's part of the whole system on the San Andreas. There's another system off to the west or off to the east in terms of the structure. That set up a strain field that as these rocks were being strained during their original formation, which was some 80 million years ago, the rocks started to deform, and particularly the brittle rocks started to break in a very systematic fashion. And so these lines that are now on the map show these structural corridors that developed in that strain field at the time. If we then post on top of that the surface expression of the largest historic deposits, now shown in the orange, what you'll see, the map pattern here, is where those structural corridors shown in the lines intercept the brittle host rocks, being either the light purple Keno Hill quartzite or the greenstones. You tend to have these major deposits form. If we then plot the new resources and reserves in the district in the yellow, you'll see that many of these are effectively the next extension along those major structures in the quartzite or the greenstones. If we plot some of these very high grade historic producing deposits where they were finding and mining high grade pods right at the surface, shown in the small red circles, you can see that those tend to occur along those identified structural corridors and where they intercept the quartzite or the greenstones. And then our three advanced stage targets are effectively in some of these areas that are in the more kind of, have had more historic activity. And then our earlier stage targets are out in these areas, particularly further to the east and to the south. But what you'll note is the aerial exposure of quartzite and greenstone on the east is a larger area than what occurs on the west. And that's the nature of the quartzite here. It's about a kilometer thick package, and it's dipping to the south and west. As we get to the east, it thickens out in some places up to 1.5 kilometers, which means we have a broader area in terms of total thickness to have as prospective exploration. And it shallows. And so we have more surface exposure of those brittle host rocks out here. In addition, on the east, we are seeing areas that suggest that the rocks have been altered thermally. And so we're seeing areas of silicification and alteration, which are suggesting that we can have a host out in this area that may be beyond just the greenstones and the quartzite, and may include some of the altered and mineralized schist units shown in the brown color. Okay, so looking at the historic production, by far the most advanced development occurred here on the west. The Birmingham Trend that we'll be talking about and the Elsa Trend are two of the most advanced. You've got 140 million ounces of past production and current resources. Alexco is continuing to drill, and today much of their drilling activity is directed towards the west, where they're going deeper along that structure as they continue to depth on that major Birmingham Calumet structural corridor. In the central part of the district, deposits like Keno Hill, Lucky Queen, Flame and Moth, a smaller amount of production, a little bit shallower in terms of the amount of focus, and there really hasn't been a lot of exploration. And then on the eastern part of the district, effectively no exploration in a modern sense up until late 2020 by metallic minerals. Okay, so we're going to kind of zoom down to the next level of detail here on the west to start to set the stage. And I know there's a lot of elements here on the map, but the same geologic map, add the structural corridors so you can see a little more detail. And what you can really see here on the map pattern, the quartzite here in the little more of a blue color, the green, you can see the context of these major structural areas. So the Birmingham Calumet Trend, 100 million ounces of historic production in these two areas. Birmingham, now you're looking at about 50 million ounces and growing. And there's no reason to expect that Birmingham won't continue to become much larger. I think it has a chance to become the largest single deposit in the district. In addition, the Elsa Trend here to the west and north of the Birmingham Trend, the second largest concentration of historic production, very major structural system. The foremost system that we drill tested and just released our results sits along this major Elsa Trend and on a north easterly splay off of the main Hector Calumet Birmingham Trend. So in terms of plumbing and structure, it's a prime target where you see the intersection of these two major structural systems. Historically, Formo had a very high grade open pit, and there were two levels of underground exploration that were carried out, and our work that were described in our news release here this week has really been focused on doing step out drilling away from those underground workings to confirm the historic numbers and sampling, and then to build on that in terms of demonstrating the potential to develop a resource. So what I want to try to do in this next slide is to try to illustrate a little bit about the structural setting that sets up for these major deposits. And so what we're looking at on this next figure, I've created two boxes, one that's focused on the Western Keno, one that's at the East Keno, and just to kind of show the structural elements. And at the bottom, you can see a cross section through these to get a sense of what the geometries look like in these two areas, which are slightly different, where you've got the tabular dipping units on the west, and you've got the folded units on the central part of the district. But if we take away the geology for a second and just strip it down to the structures, what you can see is the red lines represent the mapped veins. Again, the orange circles and the yellow circles represent the larger past producers, and then also the current resources and reserves. And then if we take a look at what are the key structures, what controls mineralization in these major deposits, the ones that have had the most production. And what we really see is that it is complex, but there is a systematic nature to these structures that we can focus on and utilize as explorationists. So effectively, one way to think about this is that the strain fields that develop create a major fault zone, a fracture zone, where you see the rocks come under tremendous shear pressures. Those major zones are shown here in the green colors, and they represent the primary structural orientation and the most movement along these structures. As those rocks continue to deform, we will see fracture zones that will develop between those two major breaks. And so in a brittle rock, fractures will jump from one side of those major shears shown in the green to the other. And on this map, those are shown as these green, or I'm sorry, as these purple connecting structures. Those are the most productive structures in the Keno district. And when we look at those deposits, for instance, at Birmingham and Hector Calumet, those can host, 50, 100 million and probably larger deposits in those. So when we talk about it being a classic Keno structure, it's not as simple as just a single tabular vein. When we look in detail at these large deposits, it's a whole series of connecting structures. These are sometimes referred to as ladder structures. So you have the green major shears, and then you have the fracture zones that develop like rungs on a ladder between. And if you can understand that context, we're on a major shear, and now we're looking at those subunits, you can start to prioritize which areas to focus in. And those are the areas that have the most promise to develop into these much, much larger parts of the system. So as you can see here quickly, Silver Queen sits here along trend of the Elsa Trend, right along that major structural break. So it's in a prime area in terms of its geology, especially when we look back at to put the geology back on. We're right down dip of the Elsa Trend as that quartzite continues underneath this other blue unit. And Formo sits as a northeasterly extension of this major set of structures at Birmingham Calumet. So the address is the right kind of address for a major system. In addition, when we look at along these structure corridors, so what I'm going to do here in the next couple of slides is now show you a cross section. So to just show you the context of these systems, when we start to look at them in the third dimension, these things really start to come together in terms of understanding them. So looking at this Birmingham Calumet structural corridor from one end to the other, so we're looking to the north and west. What you can see in cross section, the Keno Hook quartzite in the light purple. You can see the greenstones. You can see they become folded as we get to the west. The blue here represent these areas of high grade past production. And the yellow area here represents the new resource at Birmingham. So effectively, exploration along this particular structure, so we're in the plane of the main corridor of structure, and we're looking at the cross section through these geologic units. Exploration at Birmingham, as an example, was exploring along this major structural corridor in the right host rocks and effectively under an area that had a high grade open pit, and that developed the initial resource that we have today. And then subsequently, Alexco has been having success in continuing to drill deeper in this same structural plane on the lower part of the quartzite, which actually was the host to the Hector Calumet and Galpino. When we take a look along the next structure trend to the east or to the west, this is the Elsa Trend. You're going to see a similar pattern. So this is a parallel structure, one of the second largest areas of historic production. You've got the Elsa deposits along it. To the western end, the Silver Queen sits at the top of the Keno Hill quartzite and is effectively the same stratigraphic setting. We've now drill tested this, so we've confirmed, even though it's undercover, that we have the right Birmingham stratigraphy at Silver Queen. So our hole basically has tested the stratigraphy, and we'll now start to vector along that, looking for a potential significant system. At the other end of the Elsa Trend is the Formo deposit, hosted primarily in greenstones and schist. It would be comparable to the Sadie Ledoux deposit here on the Birmingham section, which was one of the highest grade producers in the district and remains open to depth in terms of further expansion. So small high grade open pit at surface at Formo. Our drilling has just started to test the down dip on the main structure and has identified a series of parallel greenstones that could also act as significant host rocks for further mineralization. Okay, so zeroing down at a smaller, more detailed scale, this is now 500 meters for scale. Here are the historic Hector Calumet deposits. Birmingham would be just off the left here. So we're in the plane of the structure. Looking at a cross section. These are the underground workings at Calumet. So you can see they were shallow. Certainly potential for these to continue to depth. And as that structure continues away from the Calumet, you start to intercept a series of brittle host rocks, greenstones, that basically are the Formo system. Our drilling followed up in an area that had the high-grade open pit right at surface, had the 2 levels of shallow underground workings just down to 100 meters, and effectively were step outs along that structure, looking to demonstrate the ability to grow down dip the Formo system, much like Alexco did at Birmingham. And the grades and the caliber of the intercepts are confirming, both in terms of width and grade, that we have a very significant system here. And as you can see from the cross section, there's lots of room here, both at the area we've already drilled to continue down dip, but also in these other 2 greenstones that have been identified to be able to continue. So looking at a plan map with some of these summary intercepts, again, here's the Birmingham Hector Calumet system shown with the vein structures and then the circles representing the kind of the center of those main mining areas. We've got the Elsa Trend itself, 2 of the main Elsa mines along this trend, converging with this northeasterly splay or segment to the main Calumet structure. The colors here represent our recent soil sampling over the Formo area. So what I would point you to is that these areas in the red and purple are anywhere from 10 to 100 grams per ton silver in soil. These are very high levels of silver in soil. Soil is an excellent early stage indicator because soil is weathered bedrock. So if you have metal in the soil, very good predictor of metal in the bedrock below. So the main area of focus was in this area. Now at this scale, that's nearly a kilometer across, but it looks small. And as you can see, stepping away from the area of drilling, we have a series of very elevated soil hits that are along likely structural parallel structures here at Formo. So just kind of looking at some of the highlights in terms of width and grade, certainly classic Keno, anything from 1 to 5 meters. So we had intercepts of 4 meters at 2,500 grams per ton silver equivalent. That's 1,100 grams silver, significant lead and zinc component that comes with that. Within that, a 3-meter zone that's actually running, almost 3,500 grams per ton equivalent. So these are of the caliber of a Birmingham system. And so both in terms of width and grade, these are certainly economic. Our challenge as an exploration company is now to continue, that we've done this confirmatory work, to continue to step out and vector along these structures to start to build tonnage. So we can build on the historic resource area, we can build on now this new drilling, and then this year's program will effectively look to continue to step down dip and along those structures to develop them further. And with the close proximity to the mill, this right on the highway, this is an excellent location for us to do that work. So zooming down to the next level of detail here, you can see now the scale bar is 50 meters. You can see that these holes were roughly 50 to 75 meter offsets as we did a series of fences across the zone. Quite encouraging to us was that the predictability of where we would hit these higher grade structures was quite good. And we see that there likely may even be additional structures that weren't previously documented. All of these structures appear to be open as we continue down dip along them in both directions. In Keno, you can see fairly rapid change in grade, over, let's say 25, 50 meter element kind of distances. So all of this area is highly prospective, and the next round of drilling would be designed to step off of these better grade intercepts, to continue to step out, and to utilize sophisticated vectors that can indicate drill this direction or that direction in terms of grade and thickness getting better. But certainly the grades that we see in holes 3, 4, and 1 have given us confidence, have confirmed the caliber of the system at Formo, and demonstrated that there's a predictiveness here that can allow us to continue the work towards developing and growing the resource. Okay, that is the main presentation on the Formo and the West Keno. I'm going to take just a couple of minutes to talk about the East Keno very quickly, and then I think we can open it up to questions, and we can step back to any of the slides that people would be interested to take a look at. Okay, so stepping back for a second to a map of that same entire district scale. This map here, actually, let me just back up for a second. So if we step back to the geologic map that we looked at earlier, and we apply the historic production, the modern reserves and resources in the yellow, the high grade structures in the red, and then the early stage soil and geophysical targets. This area is, as we've talked about, that most of the development was on this side of the district. So we're applying by analogy the continuation of these structures to the east. And as part of our effort at Keno, coming in as the new guys, we look to build on the knowledge that Alexco and their team have made in terms of understanding the key controls to mineralization in the district, and demonstrating where kind of the blue sky upside, where are those areas that are unexplored, and that really would be here on the eastern part of the district. So looking at this same area here in a magnetic map, what's exciting about our recent work is it's really highlighted in a new way the potential not only for these high-grade deposits that occur in the western part of the district, which have a strong relationship with these magnetic features as we look at the various targets, including Formo, but as we come to the east, we're seeing a relationship here that suggests that we may be seeing deeper in the system at Keno Hill, and in fact, we may be seeing the source to the mineralization at Keno as these magnetic features, which we interpret as possibly the source intrusions for the metal, the heat, and the fluids, come underneath those systems to the east. So without going into a huge amount of detail, these coincident soil and magnetic features are the target that we're looking at. We see a strong relationship in the district between this proximity to these magnetic features, and that becomes particularly pronounced as we wrap around to the east as these magnetic features become more intense and are associated with these multi-kilometer scale soil targets. So the opportunity that we're seeing here on the east is that the system, we now understand geologically that almost always in these high-grade vein districts, the original source to those high-grade veins is an intrusion somewhere. And this is particularly true in the systems in Mexico and South America. And if we look at those systems that have close proximity to those intrusions, the hallmark of these systems is that they basically have a signature of the intrusion, as well as styles of mineralization in addition to the discrete high-grade veins that allow for bulk tonnage. In other words, you see more fracture zones and bulk tonnage type geometries that could allow for mining. So our model that's evolving is we believe the entire district is controlled in the same way. And so the stuff we were just talking about at Formo likely is related to one of these source intrusions, but it may be at greater distance. On the east, what we think we're seeing is we may be directly above these controlling systems. And so that may hold out the potential for the kind of high-grade mineralization that we see classically through the district, as well as bulk tonnage systems. And so the recent results here at Keno East with the soil sampling, which led to the first pass of drilling here on the results out here on the Fox target, which is the first of many, really build our confidence again that we're on the right track in terms of understanding the systems, both for high-grade Keno style, classic discrete veins like we're seeing at Formo and Silver Queen and at the summit, but also to build on those on the east where we see that mineralization continuing outward and potentially allowing for bulk tonnage type mining, which is much, much lower cost. So I think Chris, with that, we've gone through the West Keno, we've gone through the East Keno high level. Let's go ahead and see if we have some questions here. We've gone a little bit longer than anticipated, but let's go ahead and open it up and see if there are some questions.
Sure, thanks, Greg. So right out of the gate, there are a couple questions. Firstly, regarding 2021, can you give an outlook on Keno Central East and La Plata in terms of when drilling might start and potentially meterage planned for this year? Yeah,
great question. Our focus on the western half of the district is going to be core drilling with some reverse circulation to continue to do step out drilling at the new targets at Formo, at Silver Queen, and at the summit target areas, and potentially a few other of these targets that are moving to the advanced stages. So one component of the program for 2021 will be core drilling to continue to step out along the structures, down dip, along trend, vectoring towards initial resource development. On the eastern part of the district, at Keno East, we will be looking to target in this area. We will be looking to continue to build on the success that we had at Fox. So the first pass drilling that we did on the Fox target, which is almost 4 kilometers long, with shallow reverse circulation drilling, we'll be looking to step down dip on those hits. We have 30 separate hits of significant silver. We had 6 bulk tonnage width intervals. So we'll want to step down dip on those to determine whether those can grow and become more significant. So we'll have at least 1 and possibly 2 reverse circulation drills on the eastern part of the district. We also want to test some of these very prominent anomalies in other areas that have not yet been tested. So some of the targets like Avenue, Bovet, McMillan, we should see drilling this year as well. And then in terms of timing, we didn't start drilling last year until after we completed the financing with Canaccord, which the financing happened in mid-August. So things really got kicked off in September. So it really pushed us towards the end of 2020. This year, we already are deep in the planning phases. We're fully permitted with our 10-year exploration permit. So we will be kicking off activity on the project late this month and starting to mobilize in May and drilling and starting in May and June. So we'll have a much longer program. We'll start with initially 3 drills, but have a potential for expanding even to a 4th drill. And we'll probably phase the program out. So last year we drilled almost 7,000 meters, almost 20,000 feet. This year with an earlier start and with an additional, at least 1 additional drill, it'll be a much expanded program. And we're probably looking at something on the order of 10 to 15,000 meters of drilling at Keno in the 3 regions, Keno East and the more advanced stage targets on the west and central part of the district.
Just to round that out a little bit. So on the east with the diamond rig, is there a thought on that? And if so, potential depth that might go to take a look?
Yeah, a big element that we want to test on the east is we want to be able to take a look at what's happening a bit deeper in those holes. So if we look at a cross section here from Keno East, these reverse circulation holes were what we call reconnaissance holes, in that they were the first holes into these large scale geophysical and soil targets. So they were roughly 100 meters or 300 foot depth holes. So what we want to do, those zones hit in multiple areas, both over width, up to 40 meters of continuous mineralization, and have these discrete high-grade Keno style systems that are in the 500 to 1,000 gram type grade. So we want to be able to step down dip. We may be able to do that by a larger reverse circulation drill as a first pass, but then we clearly want to be able to do a core drill to come in and geologically start to test and potentially to understand this relationship of this interpreted intrusion that we see in this very intense magnetic feature. So the program is still in the final planning stages, but what we would anticipate is initial drilling to go deeper along these intersections from last year's program. And then as our understanding and the results start to come in, to continue that work, perhaps with a core drill going to offset those to a deeper extent. And the context being, just looking at this 3-kilometer long section through the Fox area, which is just one of 12 targets, with the 6 structural intersections that we saw of significant widths, if we're able to demonstrate that these have continuity and we can grow them even at the width we already intercepted at the surface and grades, these could very quickly evolve into something that could move to a resource. And the benefit of testing kind of bulk tonnage targets is you can quickly build tonnage and results in rapid development of ounces. But we see the potential here for multiple systems that can be 25 to 50 million ounces very rapidly if we're able to step out and continue to build on what we intercepted in the last program. In terms of this year's program, we are well funded. We're sitting at approximately $7 million in cash. We've got $12 million in the money warrants that are naturally coming in. So we are fully funded to be able to undertake our programs for 2021. Those programs are going to kick off earlier. There'll be more consistent news throughout the period as that comes in. We've still got news to come from La Plata and those activities as those programs have wrapped up. And we'll be kicking off a modest confirmatory drill program later this spring at La Plata as well. So it should be an exciting period ahead with multiple projects on the go for metallic minerals. And I think, we're looking at 6+ months of consolidation for the sector. My guess is that, at some point we're going to see silver and gold pick up and move. Silver has been outperforming gold in a general sense. And I think this is an excellent time to be looking at adding to positions in names that you like, particularly in silver. And I think the one comment I would make is, in silver, there aren't a lot of names, particularly that have low political risk. And I think metallic minerals is uniquely positioned, being next door to Alexco, having so much blue sky potential on our ground as the continuation of the district. And I think, our objective is to continue to see metallic minerals be a leader in the silver space.
Final question is just the composition of the grades. So the lead and zinc content in the hits was a little higher than, little higher ratio. Just any remarks on that at Formo?
What we see in the systems in general at Keno Hill is that the base metal content, the grades in it can vary. It's called, we use the word zonation. So along a structure, you will have changes in the relative content of lead and zinc that will vary along that. And there seems to be a fairly systematic pattern to that zonation that can be an effective vectoring tool to understand where you might be along that structure. Are you deep? Are you shallow? These vein systems tend to be, the term is en echelon, so kind of side by side, where one ends, another starts and goes deeper, and they step that way. And oftentimes we'll see a change to in the base metal content that could indicate you're perhaps getting to the end of one structure and moving to the other. In general, though, we saw very good silver grades at Formo, so it really tells us we're in the heart of the system. And so far from what we see, we're going to do more work on it, but we don't see these becoming zinc deposits. They're still dominantly, their value is silver. And I think that's a very positive indicator. As we continue to learn more in the system, we'll use those base metal variations we'll study them more, and those can be, as I said, effective tools for vectoring. Appreciate everyone's time and attention. If there are further questions that we weren't able to get to, please feel free to reach out to either Chris or myself. Really appreciate the interest in metallic minerals and our work, and we're all pretty excited. We're building on the team. It's going to be an expanded program this year, and we're pretty excited about what lies ahead. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today.